All right, it looks like we have a couple people, so I'm going to go ahead and admit them because it is right at 1.
Great.
Well, looks like some are staff, but that's okay. All right, well, it's 1 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started. I'd just like to welcome you all to our Lunch and Learn today, where we will be discussing financial aid, probably one of the most important things about going to college, or the most helpful things. So just a few reminders, we are streaming live on social media, and this will be recorded. If you have any questions during the session, if you will just put them in the chat box, we will answer them after the session is over. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our Financial Aid Director, Brian DeYoung.
Thank you, Jenny. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I'm really happy to have you all here today. As Jenny said, we're going to talk about financial aid here at Davidson-Davie Community College. Obviously very important, especially if you're looking to matriculate. So kind of brief overview of what we're going to talk about today. Of course, no conversation about financial aid can be complete without talking about our tuition and fees, what our costs are going to be. Talk about the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, the North Carolina Residency Determination Service, the types of financial aid we have available, as well as a timeline of financial aid, what you want to be doing and when. And of course, at the end, we'll open up any questions that you may have. All right. So our tuition and fees. So for in-state students, our tuition is $76 per credit hour. For out-of-state students, it's $268 per credit hour. Our fees for the first 1 to 6 credit hours is $51.25. For 7 to 11, it's $64.25. And if you're full-time, which is 12 or more credit hours, it's $77.25. So put that all in the context is that if you're an in-state student with 12 credit hours, 1 semester would cost you $989.25. Excuse me. 2 semesters, so a full academic year, would be $1,978.50. If you're out of state, 1 semester would be $3,293.25, and 2 semesters is $6,586.50. Of course, these don't include books. Those are going to vary depending upon how many classes that you're taking each semester, each 8-week period, the types of classes that you're taking, and so on. So these are just the billable costs that you're going to receive from Davidson-Davie. Next, let's talk about the FAFSA. Now, FAFSA, what is it? Well, it stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It is a form that you file with the federal government, U.S. Department of Education, and they use to apply for all financial aid, any federal financial aid, any state financial aid from North Carolina, and even some assistance that we have here at Davidson-Davie. Basically, just collects information about you as a student, and in some cases, your parents. Collects financial and demographic information. You file it each and every single year that you're going to be enrolled in college, and it's available in both English and Spanish. Now, what's the whole purpose or point of the FAFSA? Well, the FAFSA is used to calculate what we call an expected family contribution, or EFC. And really what that expected family contribution is, it's an index of your eligibility for financial aid. You'll actually get a number, and that number will start off, go anywhere from 0 all the way up to infinity. And it's kind of like golf. The lower the number is, the greater your potential for grant and need-based financial aid. It is something misleading as far as an expected family contribution. If you get that number, no one's expecting you to contribute out of pocket that whatever that number is going to be. It's really used for us in the financial aid office to let us know what types of federal aid that you may receive, what other types of financial aid that you're going to receive. And it remains the same regardless of what college that you're going to be attending. So the expected family contribution that you have here at Davidson-Davie would be the same at Forsyth Tech, at UNC Greensboro, Chapel Hill, or wherever. Now, who can fill out the FAFSA? Well, you have to be enrolled in an eligible degree or certificate program All of our associate degrees are available for complete a FAFSA, as well as many of our diploma and certificate programs are also eligible to complete a FAFSA. If you're male, you have to register selective service. You're age 18 to 25. Have to have a valid Social Security number, U.S. citizen or permanent resident, get under battered immigrant status, either have an I-94 record under what you see listed there, or here under a T1 visa. When do you file? Well, if you're looking to enter this summer term starting on June 6th, you want to be filling out the FAFSA right now for 2020-21 FAFSA. And you're going to be using your 2018 tax information to complete it. One of the things that they're going to be looking at, as I said before, is not only demographic, but financial information. They're going to be looking at your taxes, as well as potentially your parents' taxes as well. So it's looking at 2018. So when you go to the FAFSA website, and I'll give you that in a few minutes, you can indicate which one that you want to be completing. So if you're looking for summer, it's very important that you indicate for 2020-21. Now, if you're looking to enter this fall in August, you want to be filling out the FAFSA for 2021-2022. And you're going to be looking for the 2019 federal tax information. Now, one of the things that the federal government has put together to make life a lot easier for folks in completing the FAFSA is that you can actually transfer your tax information over from the IRS right into the FAFSA itself. They give it a really correct, sexy and creative name. They call it the IRS Data Retrieval Tool. So one of the things you're doing as you're going through the FAFSA and completing it, you'll be prompted to ask you, would you like to transfer your information over from the IRS? And we strongly recommend doing so. You know, at this point, everyone's already filed their 2018 taxes or 2019 taxes, so that shouldn't be a problem. And we highly recommend doing it. Like I said, it makes the process a lot easier. It removes any opportunities for errors or anything like that. And you fill out the FAFSA at FAFSA.gov. And this is actually what a screenshot of what the FAFSA website looks like. So you can see here, if you're new to the FAFSA process, you'll click Start Now. It'll get you set up to get what's called an FSA ID, a Federal Student Aid ID. That's just a username and password. Students, you'll get one for yourself. Parents, if they need their information, the parents will get ones from themselves. And you'll be going online each and every single year to complete this FAFSA. Now, as I said before, a couple slides ago, you know, depending upon the FAFSA that you're filing, it's going to be either looking at your 2018 or your 2019 tax year. And for most folks, that's a fairly accurate representation of what your circumstances are for right now. But that's not the case for everybody. Things happen. People lose jobs. You have changes in employment status, reductions in income. You have unusual out-of-pocket expenses, changes in parent-marital status. Parents get separated or divorced. Significant dependent care expenses, or in some cases, it's not safe for students to have contact with their parents, or they have no means of contacting their parents. So what do you do? Because the FAFSA is going to ask you that information. Well, you know, from those applicable tax years, 2018 or 2019. Well, what you can do is you can contact us in the financial aid office and let us know what's going on. And we have the ability to review your circumstances, evaluate those, you know, with documentation, and potentially adjust the FAFSA to reflect what's happening right now in 2021, as opposed to maybe what was occurring in 2018 or 2019. We call it professional judgment. We're using our professional judgment to evaluate your circumstances and adjust the FAFSA. And this is something that you can do at any point during your academic career at Davidson-Davie. It could be right when you're getting ready to enter to college, or it could be in your last semester here at Davidson-Davie. It doesn't matter. If you find yourself in a situation like this, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and let us know, especially in current situation, you know, with COVID. But even once we get past this is something we always have available to us, and we want the opportunity to review because it's another way we can help you all out. Okay, so that covers the FAFSA. So that's really the first and primary step in applying for financial aid. But the next step is what's called a North Carolina Residency Determination Service. And essentially what this service does, it establishes your eligibility for in-state tuition as well as the North Carolina state grants. Couple ways you can do so, just going straight through the ncresidency.org, the website right there, or if you do an admissions application through CFNC, College Foundation North Carolina, you can provide that information as well. Now, it's extremely important that you do this because one, it determines whether or not your church build in-state or out-of-state tuition. And again, those North Carolina grants. Okay, so let's talk about the different types of financial aid that we have available. First, starting off with the grants. First is what we call the federal Pell Grant. This is the government's primary grant program for college students. For this upcoming year, for 2021, 2022, that amount goes anywhere from $672 to up to $6,495. And again, it's based upon that expected family contribution from the FAFSA that I talked about earlier. And again, the lower that expected family contribution is, the higher potential eligibility for that federal Pell Grant. And the cap for that expected family contribution is around $5,846. The next grant program is what we call the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, or more commonly known as SEOG. The amount that we award at Davidson-Davie is $400. And in order to qualify, your expected family contribution must be zero. This is a little different grant program where instead of with a federal Pell Grant, it's simple. If your expected family contribution falls within that range from 0 to $5,846, you qualify for Get the Money. With the SEOG, it's a little bit different because how much each school gets varies from college to college. So some schools offer different amounts and different criteria. So at Davidson-Davie, the award is $400, $200 for the year, $200 per semester, and for those students with a 0 EFC from their FAFSA. So more assistance we're talking about is North Carolina Education Lottery Scholarship. Award amount is up to $3,588. And again, we're going to be looking to the FAFSA to determine your eligibility, whether or not you qualify for a dollar amount. There's no additional applications. You just also have to make sure that you complete the North Carolina Residency Determination Service. You also may hear that referred to as the NCRDS. You only have to do the RDS once, by the way. The FAFSA, again, you do each and every single year. And of course, we also have the North Carolina Community College Grant. This amount, this award goes up to $2,400, again, depending upon the results of the FAFSA. And again, completing that North Carolina Residency Determination Service. There's no additional applications that you need to complete. And once we get your FAFSA information, and assuming that you completed North Carolina Residency Determination Service, we'll be advising you whether or not you qualify for these grants and the dollar amounts of those grants. We also have student loans and parent loans here at Davidson-Davie. The two student loans are direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans. These are guaranteed student loans, meaning that students automatically qualify for to receive these funds. There's no credit checks you have to qualify for. Essentially, they're yours if you want to take those out. Repayment, you don't begin to start paying back these loans until 6 months after you graduate or drop below half-time enrollment. And the interest rates for these loans are fixed each year. So each year you're going to get an interest rate that's going to be the interest rate for that loan for the life of that loan until you pay it off. The interest for this current year is 2.75% for direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans. That's for if you're attending summer school, that'll be your interest rate if you take out a loan for that term. The interest rates for next fall, spring, and summer, we don't have those yet. We'll get those later next month, and that goes to effect on July 1st. Now, subsidized and unsubsidized. The difference between the two is what happens to the interest while you're in school. On subsidized student loans, well, your eligibility for that is determined by the FAFSA, and any interest that accrues while you're in school and during that 6 months grace period is paid for you by the federal government. So essentially it's interest-free until you have to start paying back that loan. Then the interest will start accumulating at that fixed rate that you borrowed for that year. Unsubsidized means that interest accrues immediately from the time that we receive the money here at Davidson-Davie until you pay off the loan. Now, while you're in school and during that 6 months grace period, you do have the option of paying that interest off as it accrues, typically once every 3 months, which is something we recommend, or you can choose to defer making those interest payments. And then what the federal government will do is that after you complete, you graduate or drop below half-time enrollment, the federal government will take the interest that's accumulated during that time, add it to the amount that you borrowed, and then base your monthly payments based upon that. It's called capitalization. It's an option that's available to you, though it does increase the overall cost to you in paying back the loan. So that's not something we necessarily recommend. Now, for parents, if need be, parents can also take out what's called the Federal Parent Plus loan. Now, it is a credit-based loan. You do have to go through a credit check in order to be approved. Repayment typically begins right away while your student's in school, or you do have the option of deferring until after they graduate. Now, you don't have 6 months like they do, but you can defer during that time, and that's totally up to you. The interest rate, like the student loans, is fixed. This year, it's 4.3%. And like I said, we'll get a new interest rate for next year, later next month, and that'll go into effect starting this upcoming fall semester. So those are our student loan programs. Work study. Work study is, well, it's a part-time job available for college students. It's need-based, again, depending on the results of the FAFSA. Students generally work 16 hours a week, and you get a paycheck every 2 weeks, just like any other part-time job. This is really not intended to help you pay for tuition, but more as a means of paying for your other costs, just living expenses, giving you some money to live off of while you're going to school, help make life a little bit easier for you. One of the great things about being a work study student is that you're working for an employer that recognizes that you're a student first and an employee second. So, you've got a test coming up, we work with your class schedule, work with your exams, because we want you to be successful academically first and foremost. And of course, finally, we have our Davidson-Davie Community College Foundation scholarships. Now, for next year, for this coming fall, we've got an application priority deadline coming up quickly upon us on May 1st. So it's not a final deadline, but if for priority consideration, you definitely want to get your application in by that date. You also want to make sure you have your FAFSA file for 2021-2022. The application can be found at the Davidson-Davie Foundation Foundation website. Just click on scholarships and then click on students, and it'll take you straight to the application. So again, May 1st is that deadline that you definitely want to meet to maximize your consideration for those scholarships. Now, timeline. What do you want to be doing and when? So if you're looking to enter this summer, right now you want to be completing that 2020-2021 FAFSA. There may be some circumstances we need to collect some additional documentation from you. Sometimes we need tax information or complete some forms. So we're going to be communicating to you through your Davidson-Davie email. So be on the lookout for that information. So if we need that information, you want to respond as quickly as possible so we can complete your financial aid award. We're actually start sending out award notifications right now, starting this month for our summer students in April and May. So if you haven't done so already, definitely complete your FAFSA for 2020-2021. If you're looking to enter in the fall, you want to get that FAFSA completed for 2021-2022 FAFSA by July 1st for your maximum consideration for financial aid. Again, if we need additional documentation from you, we'll let you know through your Davidson-Davie email account. You just want to respond to that as quickly as possible. And we're going to start sending out our award notifications for that beginning next month and throughout the entirety of the summer. Okay. Well, that concludes my formal presentation, and I'd like to open any questions anybody may have.
And you can feel free to unmute and ask a question if you have one, or you can put it in the chat box, either way. Okay, and we do have one that says, what are options for DACA students?
Unfortunately, DACA students are not eligible for federal student aid, so the FAFSA or the North Carolina residency or North Carolina state grants, unfortunately not available an option for DACA students. I hate to say that, but unfortunately that's the case.
All right. If there aren't any other questions, we can conclude this part of our presentation. However, Brian and I will stay on until 1:30. So if you think of something, you're welcome to ask us then. But we really appreciate you being here, Brian, and taking the time to give us a lot of useful information and answering all of our questions. And I hope that you all learned something new today, and we'll come back next week for another Lunch and Learn. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, everybody.